One of the biggest business stories of the year just happened, and I have to catch a flight in 20 minutes. So let's get into it. For most of our lives, there's been 5 major studios in Hollywood, and they all compete with each other over directors, movies, actors, whatever, to get the biggest box office hits of the year. And then along came a scary outside threat. Netflix, and to a lesser extent, Prime Video and Apple TV, aka the tech companies. They had huge, deep pockets, they wanted content, and they started building these platforms that kind of went around traditional Hollywood. Streaming was part of the future, now it's the only future, especially around COVID. And as COVID caused streaming to massively spike up and theaters to start to die, it became kind of existential. And so all the different 5 major studios of Hollywood, of traditional old Hollywood, responded in their own way. First was Disney, the biggest and most well-capitalized of the bunch. Disney made Disney Plus. Then we had HBO Max from Warner Brothers. Then we had Peacock from Universal. Then we had Paramount Plus from Paramount. Sony, the laggard, the sickly gazelle at the back of the pack, realized they couldn't even muster up their own low-budget streaming service. They couldn't do it. So they became a farmhouse where they would make content for other platforms. They would just make movies and try to sell them to other streamers. This led to Sony creating K-pop Demon Hunters for $20 million. That's all the money they made. They sold it to Netflix, and it became the most popular Netflix film ever. So Sony is out of the race. They're out of the game, and that part of old Hollywood is basically dead. They've become a glorified outsourcing firm. Okay? Then you look at Peacock and Paramount Plus. Both of them are severely lagging in subscriber numbers, probably not going to make it. Eventually going to get folded up into something else. Then, as of today, HBO Max and Warner Brothers appears to maybe have just fallen. Netflix agreed this morning to an $83 billion takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery. This would give them access to not only HBO Max, but all of the Warner Brothers IP, including Harry Potter, The Matrix, Game of Thrones, DC, Friends, I guess Ben 10. That's, much, much more. The list goes much, much bigger than that. But this would all be part of the Netflix arm, including folding HBO Max into them. And that was one of their last really standing competitors. This leaves basically Disney Plus as the only major old Hollywood competitor still on the table. Streaming has essentially totally won were this to go through. Now, there's a lot you can say about acquisitions this big and what this means for Hollywood. But if you ask people within Hollywood, and again, I know a lot of people don't care. You're like, I don't care what an actor thinks or what a director thinks. They're screwed. They're Hollywood. But there is a monopoly element to this. When you have only, back in the day, you as a talented director who makes a movie could sell it to any one of these people. And maybe even get a little bit of a bidding war, to drive the price up of things you're creating. If there's only 1 or 2 games in town, they can charge whatever you want. You could make the greatest movie. You could make a smash hit, much like Sony did, and they give you pennies. You give you pennies on the dollar, and they get all the upside. So it's a risk. Some in Hollywood, especially indie studios, are calling it the death of Hollywood. Like, this is the final nail in the coffin because they'll have almost nowhere to go. Just a few massive tech companies who can give them whatever they want for their content. Additionally, actors and stars are speaking out against this, but only anonymously. This is from Variety, exclusive today. A-listers are writing an open letter of alarm to Congress describing a potential economic and institutional meltdown in Hollywood. To be honest, with Congress political makeup right now, they'd probably love that. They're probably salivating at that. But from a business POV, Netflix would hold a noose around the theatrical marketplace. And that's just true. The key thing about this, and the interesting part, is that they did it anonymously because they are all so afraid of speaking out. Netflix's domination is now essentially complete, and anyone that speaks out against them publicly could get blacklisted or blackballed, not have their movie picked up, be iced out of the industry, which is now run through a few key streamers. There is a chance this doesn't go through. The Trump FTC could block it. Not, I think, because they have a Lena Khan sense of anti-monopoly and really want to make sure that there's healthy competition, but mostly because they're really in deep with Larry Ellison, who owns Paramount, and have been kind of setting up for him to get control of everything. Like, he's about to buy, he might get TikTok, he might get CNN, he might get, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of news organizations are trying to funnel up into Larry Ellison, who's the second richest man in the world, big Trump donor. and again, the owner of Paramount. I think that's what they were trying to funnel towards. And this Netflix Warner Brothers thing is out of that wheelhouse. Larry Ellison's going to hate it. So it's possible this gets blocked on purely political grounds. But from a business POV, I think they won't block it. And that's where they should be looking at. The closest analog I can give you, maybe if you're a gamer, is this is very similar. Not only in scope and scale, but in like dollar amount. $83 billion is not much different from the Activision Blizzard takeover to when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. Basically, a big tech company like Netflix came in and bought an established competitor in the gaming space. And immediately what happened was the extreme sticker purchase price. Microsoft had spent a lot of money on this. And when they didn't get immediate returns, well, first of all, if they did get immediate returns and they dominated the marketplace, they'd raise prices. But even when they don't get dominated market share, they had to raise prices anyway because this was so expensive. So immediately gamers saw Xbox consoles up, first-party console prices up, and then massive Game Pass price hikes, 50% price hikes, 38% more on PC Game Pass. So I think most gamers, now that the dust has settled, has regarded this takeover of Activision Blizzard actually a massive failure. There was layoffs. There was no major game updates or releases. And then there was huge price increases. And let me tell you something. If there's any company that likes to increase prices already, it's the dogs at Netflix. They've been doing it. They've been doing it without a reason. You're going to give them a reason. You're going to give them more market share, fewer competitors, and a massive bill they need to make up on of $83 billion. The most likely outcome is rampant price increases and more consolidation. And this is the first domino. Look, we've talked about this for a while, but there is no doubt in my mind that eventually Peacock and Paramount Plus fold into something else. They aren't big enough on their own. So we're down to a world where it's Disney Plus versus the tech companies. And I don't know how much more longer they can stand. Not like Disney Plus has a lot of fan goodwill right now. And I guess there's one person really glad about this, and that's the dog David Zaslav, because he became CEO of Warner Bros. Discovery and has so far had one major business decision, which is to change the name to Max, then change it back. And I think that's one of the most frustrating parts about this to me, because much like Bobby Kotick, who essentially ran Activision Blizzard into the ground and then punted it off to Microsoft and made a $400 million personal payout, Zaslav is about to come in, shutter some movies for tax reasons, change the title twice, and then make $500 million from this sale. It's just a little sickening. It's a little frustrating. I don't necessarily have a deep love for old Hollywood and the way things were done, but it was at least somewhat competitive and allowed a variety of things to get made. And for an ecosystem of directors and talent and staff and writers to make some money. And in the streaming era where it's consolidating, it really feels like the only people making money are guys like this. That's the major update for today. We don't really know what's going to happen. It is just the announcement that both boards have agreed. The last thing I'll say is they seem to think they're going to get it through. Netflix is so confident this deal will get through that they offered a $6 billion termination fee. AKA, if the deal doesn't happen for any reason, they have to pay $6 billion to Warner Brothers. So they seem to be very, very confident they can get this through. It should happen within the next 12 months. That's the major update. I wanted to give you guys early. If anything new happens, I'll cover it here on the Big A Clips channel. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you. Bye.